Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Buckeye Politics. It's me, your favorite Ohioan. Before we get into the video, I want to remind everyone that I will be going live on November 8th covering the elections. We're going to be going live. We're going to have some guests on. Going to be looking at the results coming in. Going to be a lot of fun. I really hope you all can make it. We will begin at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on November 8th, which is Tuesday, which is like 3 days away. That's absolutely crazy. Time's flying by, but so I really hope you all can make it. But we're going to now look at the 2022 New York governor election. This is a race that honestly should be safe for the Democratic Party. If you look at New York's history, which we are going to do right now, Biden won the state of New York by 23 points, easily winning in New York City by like 50%. Trump only got 12% in New York County, 15% in the Bronx, 26% in Queens, 22% in Kings County. So New York State or New York City is a solidly Democratic leaning area, as is much of the state. I mean, Monroe County, home to Rochester, voted for Biden by 20 points. Erie County, New York, voted for Biden by 15 points. Some of the college towns and some in the state capital, like Albany, voted for Biden by 31. The entire state of New York is such a safe. It's a Democratic stronghold, and Lee Zeldin pulling off a win here, as polls apparently suggest he's going to, or not saying he's going to win, but they have it closer than expected, with one or two polls having the race tied and one having the race Zeldin leading. Do I personally think Lee Zeldin's going to pull off this win? No, I don't. I think Hochul's probably going to win probably going to win re-election by a couple of points. But still, the fact that this race is so close is really interesting. It just shows how horrible of a job Kathy Hochul has done, and New Yorkers are really waking up to that, and they're supporting Lee Zeldin. However, we still have got to make a lot more gains if we want to get Lee Zeldin in Albany. Kathy Hochul and the New York Democrats are a very tough machine to beat. I don't think people really understand how big of an upset this would be if Lee Zeldin does win. Like, New York going Republican would be absolutely crazy. Like, that is like, I don't even know that there's nothing in modern political history that would describe that. I mean, maybe Trump's 2016 win defying the polls, but even then, like, that was still possible. Like, this win here would be crazy. I have no other word for that. I'm going to show you right now how Democratic leaning New York is. So Biden won the state of New York by 23 points. Clinton won the state by 22 points. Obama won the state by 28 points. Obama won the state by 26 points in 2008 when he beat McCain. In 2004, John Kerry won New York by 18 points. In 2000, Al Gore won New York by 25 points. In 1996, Bill Clinton won New York by 28 points. In 1992, Bill Clinton won New York by 16 points. In 1988, when even much of the country was red, including the Northeast, Michael Dukakis won New York by almost 5 points. And finally, in 1984, the last time New York voted for Republican, Ronald Reagan carried the state of New York by 8 points. So as you can see here by looking at these results, that's just how big of an upset this would be. This is like 30 plus years of precedent where New York is such a Democratic leaning state, and we've all seen how downhill it's gone since then. So it makes sense people will be starting to wake up. But still, the fact that that's 30 plus years of precedent that Lee Zeldin has to overcome, the Democratic machine, the Democratic state. This is like the stronghold. It would be crazy if Lee Zeldin does pull off a victory. But I certainly think it's possible he does. I don't think it's the most likely scenario, but I do believe that there is a path to victory for Lee Zeldin, and we're going to analyze that using right now. So we're going to map out Lee Zeldin's pathway to victory, more or less. We're going to start here in southern New York, which is really where Zeldin's pathway to victory will be decided. Lee Zeldin, if you did not know, is a former congressman from Long Island, which is home to Suffolk County. Suffolk County is voted for Donald Trump by like a couple hundred votes. It was a very close election. Trump very narrowly won the county, and he won it back in 2016 by a pretty sizable margin, I believe. Not super sizable, but a couple of points, and he narrowly won it in 2020. So this is a county that Lee Zeldin has represented before, and if he wants to win statewide, he has to get crazy turnout in Suffolk County. Suffolk County is the largest county in New York that votes for the Republican Party on a consistent basis. If Zeldin cannot win this county by just a couple hundred votes like Trump did, if Lee Zeldin wants to win in the state of New York and beat Kathy Hochul, he has got to just turn out every single voter. He's got to get every single Republican on this island to turn out and vote for him, to be honestly. That's the only way he wins this race. Is it possible? Yes. Zeldin's beloved here. He gets crazy crowd sizes from what I've heard from people on the ground. There's so much energy for Lee Zeldin on Long Island, and I certainly believe it's possible that he gets crazy turnout and manages to win Suffolk County by 5 to 10 points. Nassau County. This is another case. This is kind of going to be one of those counties that's really going to decide the election. Nassau County went to Joe Biden by about 10 points. However, it is on Long Island. It's kind of a suburb of New York City. It's a relatively diverse suburb. There's white working class parts. There's very upper class parts. There's very diverse parts. There's very white parts. It's a pretty interesting county overall. It went to Joe Biden by about 10 points, and it shifted left about 3 points, but that's pretty much in line with the national environment. So when you really take into account like how disliked Trump was in terms of his approval ratings, and Biden, it pretty much was stayed the same. So this is a county that Lee Zeldin has to do well in. Like I said, it's on Long Island. It's a little bit more of a competitive county. Sure, it votes for the Democrats, but it's a little bit more competitive. There are a lot of Republicans there. Zeldin has got to win a bunch of these Republicans over. He probably has to win the county in all honesty, to win statewide. I really don't see a pathway for Zeldin to lose this county and manage to win statewide. And I think it's possible he wins this county. I think this is kind of going to be one of those swing counties, kind of like Ohio was for the longest time for presidential elections. Whoever wins Ohio wins the election. I think this is going to be whoever wins Nassau County wins the election. Because if Zeldin destroys Hochul here, then that's a pretty good indicator he's going to do very well across the rest of the state. While if Hochul manages to win the county by couple of points, it's pretty obvious Zeldin's going to lose. And this is a pretty sizable county population-wise, a lot of votes in this county, so Zeldin has to do well here. Going over to Staten Island, this is another area that Lee Zeldin has to do well in. Staten Island is a pretty Republican-leaning part of New York State. Trump got 57% of the vote here to Joe Biden's 42%. There are not as many raw votes as compared to some of these other counties that are a lot bigger, but there is still a sizable Republican majority here, and Lee Zeldin has to get at least these 123,000 Trump voters to turn out for him, probably more. He has to just trounce Hochul and Staten Island. Staten Island is kind of the largest part of New York that really votes Republican on a sizable amount, other than probably Suffolk County, but that's very narrowly. Staten Island's more of a Republican stronghold in the state. So Zeldin just has to absolutely trounce Hochul and Staten Island, honestly. If he can and that's really his only pathway to victory. That's all I can really say. Is it possible he does that? Yes, absolutely. We've seen in the polls Zeldin doing very well in Staten Island. He held a rally there where he got crazy turnout. People were waiting in line for hours to see him speak. So I do believe it's possible he trounces Hochul and Staten Island, but he definitely has to outperform Trump. We're going to go to New York City now. This is the most Democratic-leaning part of the state, and one of the most Democratic-leaning parts of the country. Brooklyn, Joe Biden got 77% of the vote, which is equal to about 703,000 votes. In Queens, Joe Biden got 72% of the vote, equal to about 500,000 votes. In the Bronx, Joe Biden got 83% of the vote, which is about 355,000 raw votes. And in Manhattan, Joe Biden got 86% of the vote with 603,000 votes. Yeah, New York City is literally it's a safe blue. There's no way a Republican can win here. New York City is just super blue. So Zeldin, this is the big hurdle that Zeldin has to overcome. He can do well in upstate New York. He can do decently in the suburbs, but if he doesn't make significant gains in New York City as a whole, he's screwed. There's no way he can win. There's just too many votes. So New York City is such a Democratic-leaning area for a couple of reasons. One is it's a very minority-based area. There's a huge African American population, huge Hispanic population, huge Jewish population, although Jews might be the key to Zeldin's victory. And then there's also a sizable white population as well, but the white working class voters of New York City pretty much vote Republican. The more upper class white voters used to be more Republican leaning, but now they're pretty much safe Democrat because of social issues and just polarization, and Trump as well. A lot of these voters don't like Trump. So New York City is just such a huge hurdle to overcome. But I'm going to break down what Zeldin would have to do to win here. So Lee Zeldin has been endorsed by several Jewish organizations, and I believe he is Jewish himself, and that is a very good thing. New York City as a whole has a very sizable Jewish population. This is a population that voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump in 2020, which is kind of funny because, the media spent all day, every day slamming Trump as a Nazi, but he won Jews overwhelmingly in New York City. All the Jewish neighborhoods voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. These are neighborhoods that are going to vote for Lee Zeldin by the same margin, and ones that he has to win by the same margin. So it's very good that the Jewish populations of New York City endorsed Lee Zeldin, and he's made a good effort to appeal to those voters because of that. It's going to help him quite a bit, narrowing up these margins. I mean, Hochul cannot win Queens by 50%. She can't win Brooklyn by 50 points. If Zeldin can even get down to 40 points, that'd be ideal. Ideally, he wins it he gets it with even closer, but even just a 10-point shift would probably be enough to make this race super competitive. The other thing I want to talk about is the sizable Muslim population in New York City. Muslims are a very solidly Democratic-leaning voting bloc. They voted Democrat for pretty much every election, and there is a sizable Muslim population in New York City. A lot of Muslim organizations and even a couple of churches, I believe, have endorsed Lee Zeldin. That's how bad it is in New York. New York City is gone so downhill that Muslim churches are endorsing Jewish politicians. That's how desperately they need change. Tells you a lot about the state of New York. But anywho, if Zeldin can do very well in those Muslim neighborhoods, which I believe he will, because I mean Trump did very well in the Jewish neighborhoods, mostly because the rabbis and the leaders there and the organizations endorsed him. So if Zeldin gets the endorsement from a lot of Muslim organizations and churches, he can probably do well in some Muslim parts of New York City, which will help bring down the margin as well. The other thing I want to talk about is Hispanics. Hispanics make up a pretty sizable population in New York City. They shifted heavily to the right. If Zeldin can continue to do well with Hispanic voters who are a little bit more socially conservative, a little bit more religious than the rest of New York, then he could probably do well there. If he can just continue Trump's trends with Hispanic voters, he can probably do well. So Zeldin's key, to summarize, is he has to do very well in Suffolk County, where he is from. He has to flip Nassau County. It's kind of going to be the bellwether of the state. And he has to just absolutely trounce Hochul and Staten Island. In New York City, he has to hope for a little bit more reduced turnout, which it does look like we're going to see. And he also has to do very well with Hispanic voters, Jewish voters, and Muslim voters, which he's been endorsed by many organizations. And it appears, based on the polls, he's going to do so. Coming up here to Westchester County and Rockland County, these are Rockland County is kind of a swingy county. It only voted for Joe Biden by about 2,000 votes. Lee Zeldin has to win this county here. It's a pretty white, more affluent leaning county. They just didn't like Trump. They're wealthier suburbanites. Probably commute to New York City. Zeldin's going to do very well here. These are probably the key voters that are worried about crime. So if Zeldin can just do decently in this county, he has to win Rockland County. He doesn't have to necessarily trounce Hochul here because there are not that many votes, but he has to do pretty well in Rockland County. Westchester County, this is very similar to Rockland County, except even more so. Very white, very affluent, very college educated, and this is a county that Joe Biden got 67% of the vote in. Trump got 31%. This is a county that probably used to be solidly, or at least more Republican leaning. But since Republicans have kind of become the more populist anti-establishment party, it's turned off some of the more wealthy mega donors and very wealthy suburbanites. The college-educated vote has become overwhelmingly more Democratic, just because college voters tend to be a little less religious, a little more, for lack of a better word, narcissistic. They think that they're better than other people, but we don't have to talk about that. But Westchester County, this is another county that Lee Zeldin has to do well in. He doesn't necessarily have to win it, but he does have to do well here. He cannot lose by like 30 points like Trump did. And once it got another county that crime is really going to be a major issue, I believe that this county has seen a massive uptick in murders. I don't think the wealthy, college-educated suburbanites are going to really like that. I think Zeldin can do very well in this county. He's not going to win it, but I think he can do much better, and if he wants to win, he has to do much better. This is going to take us to a little bit more upstate New York. We're going to be covering some of the more upper parts of the state. We're going to be going over to the great city of Buffalo and home to Erie County. So in Erie County, this is a county that voted for Joe Biden by 15 points, but only voted for Hillary Clinton by 4 points. It's a county that's pretty swingy. It's a very white, very working-class county. This is a county Zeldin probably has to win. I think he can win it, and if he does, I think he's in a pretty good spot to win across the state. Not a whole lot to say here. It's a very white, very unionized county. I think Zeldin's running a good campaign to fit the area. They're very pro-Trump voters, and Zeldin's probably going to win. Zeldin, I don't know if he's going to win the county, but if he does, that's definitely a good sign. All these counties over here that are red, Orleans County, Niagara County, Chicago County, all these counties here that are red, that are light red, Zeldin has to make deep red. Like this county here, Wyoming County. Zeldin has to make all these counties here deep red. These are very rural, very Republican-leaning counties, but they're just, the voters don't turn out, or there is a decent amount of more moderate Democrats who live here who keep the counties relatively close. Zeldin has to max out turnout in this part of the state. Running over to Rochester, New York now, in Monroe County. This is a county that I think Zeldin can make it close in, but it probably not win it. I mean, Rochester, I was there about a month ago or so. It's a great city. But Rochester, it's very Democratic leaning. It's always been a lot more liberal than its neighbor, Erie County and Buffalo. So while I think that Rochester maybe narrows up a bit, I don't think Zeldin wins it. But like I said, really, there's not that many votes in there. I mean, there's maybe 300,000 votes. Like I said, the big key for Zeldin is doing well in New York City. He can just sweep Hochul up here, but if he loses in New York City by the margins Trump did, it's not going to matter. So I think Zeldin has to do very well in Monroe County and Rochester, but he doesn't necessarily have to win it. Rest of these red counties over here, these light red counties, Zeldin has to max out in. Some of these counties near Vermont that are more rural, I believe this is where Kathy Hochul used to represent in New York, in like the state senate. I believe this is where she's from. So these might be harder counties to crack. But like I said, let's see 18,000 votes, maybe 15,000 votes. These are counties that Zeldin probably will win very narrowly. But even if he loses or doesn't win by that big of a margin, it's not going to be the end of the world. These counties here in the more central part of New York, got to max out Republican votes. Got to make these deep red. Albany is, once again, not all that heavily populated, but a lot of these suburbs are only lean Democrat. A lot of these counties here, like Schenectady, Rensselaer, Saratoga, these are counties that only voted for Joe Biden by 10,000 votes or so, and maybe 10 percentage points. If Zeldin can win a couple of these counties and narrow up the margins in Albany, he's a pretty good spot. Similar story with Columbia, Dutchess, and Ulster. These are counties Zeldin has to win, even if it's by narrow margins. And then Tompkins County, this is a county that's pretty much very deep blue, but not a lot of votes here. I think Zeldin just has to do a little bit better. So with that, this is pretty much the big summary of the state of New York. Hope I explained everything in terms of Zeldin's path to victory. Basically comprises of doing much better in the more Republican parts of New York City, like Staten Island and Suffolk County and Long Island, bringing down Democratic turnout and just cutting into those margins in New York City, while also maxing out turnout in upstate New York. So with that, thank you for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe for more.